So I'm extremely conscious that I was always going to be standing between you and either home or the drinks reception, but now I'm doing that running just slightly late. But I think it was really worthwhile to let that panel run on and to really hear what was coming from our politicians. What I'm going to do is start just with a little story about how it is that we got here today, and I'm hoping that I know how to work the technology. Hold on, I do not. Oh. Sorry? Oh, is it there? Excellent. So this conference really came about through a group of people who got together, as John mentioned earlier today, to have essentially a supper around the kitchen table. And we broke bread and we shared stories, we shared our experiences, and we came to the conclusion that something had to be done, but we weren't quite sure what that would be. And today is really the culmination of some of that work and some of those conversations over the past year. But this person here, do you know who this is? Can anybody recognise her? The photo's maybe not the best quality. Can you recognise her? Cabsec knows. It's Alanis Morissette. At the start of July, at the start of the summer this year, I went along to see Alanis Morissette at the SEC. Absolutely fantastic night out. It was the first night out I'd had in a really long time. But this isn't just about my pure social life. What I realised at the event and seeing those 14,000 people in the SEC was a shared experience where we each had an individual version. In some ways, lots of people going in and out of the system, having their own individual idea, story, narrative of that, but ultimately we all have an idea of what the NHS should be to us in the same way as we all had an idea that night about what would happen at that gig. The other thing I'd like to mention is that, of course, we were listening to music, to lyrics, to somebody's life, to their emotions, to their vulnerabilities, and to the opinions that they have. And we don't even necessarily need to agree with all of those lyrics and all of those opinions, but what we can sort of recognise is the skill and the artistry and enjoy that experience. But there was something else that also happened as a result of that gig. So this isn't a conference about the sexual violence experienced by girls around the world. But what Alanis did, because we're best mates now that I've been to her gig, is put up hard data alongside the lyrics and the music and the sense that you're part of something bigger than yourself. She used evidence to back up the emotional story that she was telling that night. And in some ways, that's what we've tried to do today, is to draw together the narratives about the NHS and how we feel about that, back that up with the polling by Mark Diffley, back it up by the feedback we've had, back it up by panels with clear experience of how to make things better. And you might think, well, we can't fill the SEC. You can't get 14,000 people into a venue and talk about the NHS. Well, in very recent memory, our First Minister did do that for some of the political issues that were being discussed at that time. And so I think we need to be more ambitious about the narrative and the story of the NHS. I think we need to talk about it in a better, more positive way. And of course, there are absolute challenges around that. But I think, as Carrie said, we need to kind of change that a little bit, and as Dave alluded to, what I hear on a Monday morning sets the tone for my team, the challenges, the difficulties, the terrible stories that we hear. But there's also good going on, and we have to challenge ourselves to make sure that we don't lose sight of that. So I'd like you just to have a think about that as you go away tonight, about the human connections that we have made here. We talked about trust earlier today, and I think that trust has grown in this room today. I hope that you feel it as much as I do. I'd also like to say in terms of the politicians, and I'm going to take a glass of water just before I do that to gird my loins. I noticed a shift on the panel throughout that session. I don't know if anybody else noticed it. And I hope you don't mind me saying this to our political colleagues who are here today. I used to work in Parliament. I work for the Scottish Parliamentary Corporate Body. And so I have a natural empathy for politicians because I understand the hard work that you do. I understand the cross-party discussions that happen behind closed doors or just in the bar. I understand all of that. But when you came in and you started talking, I don't know if you were aware of your body language, because I really was, because I was in the front row. And the body language was of the chamber. I don't know if you know that. The way that you shook your heads or that you used your body language and they turned to one another, it wasn't disrespectful, but it was really different to what I think we'd experienced during the rest of this day together. And then over time, you relaxed a bit, you got into it, and you started to find the consensus across those tables. And we could feel it in the room. I think we felt the change with that. And then I have to say, Carrie, like you absolutely nailed it with that I don't know, roundup of what it is that we're looking for in terms of relationships that we need to build together. And I thought that was really fascinating. And I thought this is one thing that we can take away from today, is that we've created an environment where people can start to relax, where we can start to talk to one another with respect, but also with challenge, and that we can start to make those connections. And you guys will be doing that all the time, I know that. But we need to see it. We need to see you do that. Because if all we see is what's in the chamber, then that's all that we can take with us when we talk to our constituents and the people that we are supporting in terms of their healthcare. Now, today, the people in this room, I think that we can, and somebody with a GDPR qualification will tell me I can't do this, but I'm just assuming that you are now with us in terms of what it is that we are trying to do. So you're part of it. It started with maybe 8 or 9 people around a dinner table. It expanded to about 20 people, but now we've got over 100 people in this room. So whether you like it or not, there'll be some sort of consent issue there. I now see you as part of that. I see you as having committed to trying to do some of the things that we were talking about. In terms of some of those things, I think Jackie said it, you said, oh, you've heard the same things for 20 years, 25 years. I can totally understand that. I think my career has essentially coincided with the Parliament. I campaigned for the Parliament in 97 and then saw it open in 99. So I can feel that frustration. But there is something a little bit different today. First of all, the organisations that came together to deliver this event, we are not your usual suspects in some ways. In some ways you could say we are. But we have never worked together in this way before, the 3 organisations. There's not one of the organisations that's a formal NHS statutory body who's run this event. And I'm not sure how many NHS events of recent times haven't either been sponsored by government or by the NHS directly itself, or possibly by a conference company, fair enough. But this is a different sort of an event. The other thing I would mention is just the sort of content that we've had. So we've had our young people, our MSYPs, come along and challenge us. And the key takeaway I took from that, and I hope you do too, is not just how we engage with young people, but everything they said about engagement was right for everyone. It was best practice engagement. And I was writing it down going, I can't believe I've forgotten that this is how you're meant to engage, that this is how we should be doing this. I also really loved that when they were asked a question, if they didn't know the answer, they paused and said, we're just going to go and check our manifesto, or we're going to check the numbers and give you the right information. How often do we wing it? How often do we round the numbers up or down, depending on what might fly for us? But they showed us how to do that in a really highly professional way. It was absolutely fantastic. Mark, thank you for your polling data and how it is that you presented that to us. Again, we've put data against the narrative and how it is that we want to be able to present not just what we know about the NHS internally, but what the public think. The public aren't daft, and they can see us. They can see whether we are being good leaders or bad leaders. They can see whether we're saying we need reform, but we're not delivering it. Right? They're not daft. So we need to be able to respect that, respect the information that they're giving us, and then use that to help us formulate our decisions and how it is we take our leadership forward. There's 2 things I just want to mention before I close. One is trust and agency came up quite a few times today, and I think we should hold on to those terms and have a think about how it is that we embed them in the leadership that we need to do as we take our work forward. And also something else, hard choices mitigate risk. The only regrets I have in my life as a leader is when I didn't take the hard choice earlier. I've never thought, I wish I'd waited 6 months to take that really difficult decision. But I frequently sat at night and thought, why didn't I? I knew I needed to do it. I knew I had to take people with me, and then I just sat on it and I didn't take it forward. And I don't want any of us in this room to think about that and feel that. The final thing I'm going to say is that I think that when we're making those hard choices and seeing change, there's a couple of things that we're going to have to feel and go through. We do have to feel them. It has to hurt to prioritise. If it's not hurting a little, you're not prioritising. You have to see a shift from one position to another. And if we can't see it, and if we can't track it, and point where the decisions were made, we've not done it. And can we name the trade-offs, and can we describe the decisions? Because if we can't do that, again, I don't think that we've achieved. Finally, what I would say is that I think today we should take away quite a lot of heart from this conversation. It's not been perfect. It still sounds and looks a little bit like a normal conference. Maybe there's been points where you've not been that interested in what we were saying or the discussion that was going on. But I hope we go away with a bit of humility, increased integrity, and absolutely 100% increased curiosity about how we take those actions forward. Thank you all for your time today, for your inputs, for your respect, for the challenge that you've made. I just want to say thank you for all of that. But finally, what I want to do say to you is join us at the drinks reception and let's celebrate the fact there's people in this room who can make a difference. Thank you.